The James Cooley Show, It's Your Life, can be heard every Sunday at 9 p.m. right here on The Answer San Diego. Life is full of circles, cycles, phases, and stages. It's your choice to ignore or embrace them. Motivational speaker, author, military veteran, and founder of the J.C. Cooley Foundation, James Cooley, and his guest will inspire and equip you to strive for your own greatness and overcome adversities. Listen to The James Cooley Show, It's Your Life, every Sunday at 9 p.m. right here on The Answer San Diego.
The James Cooley Show, It's Your Life, can be heard every Sunday at 6 p.m. right here on 660 AM The Answer in Dallas-Fort Worth. Life is full of circles, cycles, phases, and stages. It's your choice to ignore them or embrace them. Motivational speaker, author, military veteran, and founder of the J.C. Cooley Foundation, James Cooley, and his guests will inspire and equip you to strive for your own greatness and overcome adversities. Listen to The James Cooley Show, It's Your Life, every Sunday at 6 p.m. right here on 660 AM The Answer in Dallas-Fort Worth.
The James Cooley Show, It's Your Life, can be heard every Sunday at 6 p.m. right here on The Answer. Life is full of circles, cycles, phases, and stages. It's your choice to ignore or embrace them. Motivational speaker, author, military veteran, and founder of the J.C. Cooley Foundation, James Cooley and his guests will inspire and equip you to strive for your own greatness and overcome adversities. Listen to The James Cooley Show, It's Your Life, every Sunday at 6 p.m. right here on The Answer.
Yeah. Dr. James J.C. Cooley. The James Cooley Show. It's your life. Yeah.
Hello, welcome to the James Cooley Show, It's Your Life. I'm your host, Dr. James J.C. Cooley, and wow, we got an absolutely fantastic show coming your way. A little history we're going to talk about. We're going to educate the public on a lot of things that they need to know about Black history. And, just like all month long, it's Black History Month. And we are here to incite, educate, enlighten, and bring the world a little bit more closer to Black history and what it means in America and around the world. We got an absolutely fantastic guest coming your way today. I'm not going to give it away because Dr. Cooley would beat me up. She'll give me that look and say, I'm doing her job. How you doing, Dr. Michelle Cooley? How you doing?
I'm doing great, James. How are you doing today? Excited about our guest?
I am so excited. I am so excited to have this guest on today. We had his sister on a couple of weeks ago, and she said, "Hey, you gotta have my little bruh on the show, even though they twins." You know, so we got him. So I'm excited about the show. I'm excited about the topics that we're going to talk about. I am just excited. So Michelle, can you do the honors by introducing the title of the show, purpose of the show, and introduce this absolutely fantastic guest?
Oh, most definitely. So the title of today's show is called Adversity Incites Talent That in More Prosperous Days Would Lay Dormant. So we're having a conversation with James J. Johns II. He's a military veteran and the son of Tuskegee Airman James J. Johns. He's going to discuss what was the genesis, well, basically what's the genesis of the title and what does it really mean? And this is applicable today. So again, James J. Johns II is the son of Lillian Saxon and James J. Johns, who was a Tuskegee Airman. He was born at Clark Air Force Base in the Philippines on December 7th in 1951. His family moved to Colorado in 1958. He attended Stedman Elementary, Smiley Jr. High, and graduated from East High in 1969. He was drafted into military service during the Vietnam War and entered the Air Force in 1971, where he became an aircraft mechanic. After he was honorably discharged, he was hired at United Airlines in 1976 and retired after a 42-year career as an aircraft maintenance technician and union representative. He wears many hats. He loves fishing, singing, golfing, is an experienced craftsman and carpenter, and is known as the Ebony Craftsman. Above all, he loves the Lord and his family deeply. He's been married to his beautiful wife, Zon, for 28 years and is a father to his children, Delisa, Jennifer, Jerron, Kelli, and Ashley. He's a proud grandfather of 8, and he currently resides in Colorado. Please welcome to the show, Mr. James J. Johns II.
How you doing? How you doing?
I'm fine. That was a heck of an introduction there.
Man, you know what I tell you, man, it's an absolute pleasure having you on the show. And I'm excited because a population in America, they heard about the Tuskegee Airmen, but they really don't know what that means. They really don't understand the contributions that it had and how it shaped the war. You know, so we're going to talk about all of those great things today, my friend. We're going to talk about all of that and talk about your pops and everything. So I want to start off. Can you tell our viewers and our listeners a little bit more about you? Where you grew up, what made you click? Why are you so passionate about what you're doing?
Well, we grew up all over the world, actually. My father being Tuskegee Airman, we traveled. I was born in the Philippines. We left there, came back to Ohio, and then left Ohio. And I was raised for 3 years in Okinawa. I have to tell you that Okinawa was an extraordinary experience for a kid of 5 to 8 years old. I remember everything to this day. We left Okinawa and came back to Colorado, which is where my father retired. He opened his own business after retirement, 3J Florist Gift Shop down on 34th and Columbine. He was an extraordinary man, and I'm really looking forward to talking about his accomplishments as an Tuskegee Airman.
Can you, first of all, can we tell our viewers and our listeners a little bit about the Tuskegee Airmen, exactly how it got started and how they went about selecting those great pilots?
Sure. First of all, by the title that I use today, Adversity Incites Talent That in More Prosperous Days Would Lay Dormant, was actually, I was actually introduced to that saying as a young boy of 11. My father had me helping him build a 2-car garage in our backyard. And if you've ever worked with concrete, you know that it's really hard work. My father had me staging cinder blocks and moving brick and mixing mortar and building scaffolding. In other words, I felt like a slave. The temperature was in the 90s that day, and I was home bone tired. I was bone tired. And in my frustration, I told him that I hated this work. It was too hard, and I wanted to quit. And rather than scold me, he took the opportunity to teach me a very valuable lesson. He sat me down and he said, "Son, you're looking at this the wrong way. I know it's hard, but stop looking at it as something negative. Rather, see it as a way to get better. It's actually a blessing in disguise." As an 11-year-old, I thought it was the stupidest thing I'd ever heard. Why should I embrace hardship solely for the purpose of getting better? I preferred the path of least resistance. He saw that I was frustrated and that I didn't fully understand. So he asked me, "Do you get stronger by lifting more weight or less weight?" And I promptly said, "More weight." He said, "Absolutely." He said, "Likewise, if you can bear the burdens of life's trials, you will get stronger." Then he said something to me that I will never forget. He said, "Remember, son, that adversity incites talent that in more prosperous days would lay dormant." In other words, if you can endure hardship, you will receive a blessing on the other side that you would have never received had you not pressed through the hardship. Then he asked me if I understood what he meant, and I tentatively nodded. "Yeah, I know." But he said, "No, you don't." He said, "I know that you don't fully understand or appreciate what I'm telling you right now, but you're going to find out that the older you get, the wiser I'm going to become in your eyes." Then I asked him, "Did your father teach you this, Dad?" And he said, "No, my father died when I was young. I adopted this saying while having to endure one of the most racist attempts by Southern white men who were determined to prove the inferiority of an African-American combat unit in Tuskegee, Alabama." And that was when he told me, that was the first time he told me about the Tuskegee Airmen.
Wow. Great way of putting that. I mean, you just caught a whole lot of people attention, so when did you understand what he was saying about, lifting and getting stronger and sharpening the mind to help shape you as the person that you are today?
Well, each time I encountered some kind of adversity, these things would ring or come back. I would hear my father saying this stuff to me. And so as I got older, I was 11 years old and I started playing ball, and I could always remember my father telling me, "Try harder, stay in the game, stay with it." And, as I grew older, each time I was introduced to something, I wanted to see if I could master it and not allow it, to keep me from learning, about it. So I carried this along with me, my entire life, and I'm really glad that I had, I had that to fall back on, because there were times, and I wasn't always successful, but it was good. I was watching your intro. And I saw what you said, know the past, shape the future. And, that is so apropos because if you don't know where you're going, if you don't know where you've been, you don't know where you're going to go. And, that's what my father taught me. And I'm very grateful.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. If you don't know where you're going, that means that you did not even research the past. And could be going in a lot of different wrong directions.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, this is so great. We have to take a station break right now. How about I tell you what, whichever platform that you're watching us on, whether you're watching us on E360 Television, Transfer TV, YouTube, Apple TV, Facebook, LinkedIn, Rumble, AM 660 The Answer, the radio out of Dallas, or AM 1170 The Answer. In San Diego, welcome to the show. If you want to be part of the conversation, all you have to do, just go to the comments, ask any question that you might have. I promise you, we'll get you an answer. It's your life, and we'll see you shortly after the break.
Really get a chance to know who you are. And once you know who you are, You truly know who you are? Love who you are. Love who you are. You're a masterpiece. Love who you are. Love who you were born to be. Love me some me. That's what I'm talking about. When you leave high school, you gotta know today or tomorrow, or hopefully today, what your plans are. Hopefully, there is no bad decision unless there is no plan. Create, collaborate, commit with confidence. Commit with what? Commit with what? In everything that you do.
Noah Dingley here, producer of The James Cooley Show, It's Your Life. And the new audio version of James' book, Country Boy, City Boy, A Journey That Ain't Over Yet, is a must-have. James shares his true life story of struggle and success in America. It's both a cautionary tale and a roadmap to achieving the American dream. Get the new audio version of Country Boy, City Boy, A Journey That Ain't Over Yet by James Cooley on Amazon.com or wherever audiobooks are sold.
It's the James Cooley Show. It's your life. Dr. James J.C. Cooley. Yeah. Come on.
Hello, welcome back to the James Cooley Show. It's your life, and just meditate through the commercial breaks because I was listening what Jim was saying, and it kind of sparked that we have to know where we came from in order to move forward, and we also have to understand that it requires hard work in order to be successful in anything that you do. And I believe it's a mindset. We have to develop the right mindset.
Yep.
And as you mentioned, Jim, that your dad told you that the older you become, the more understanding and wiser you would be. Mm-hmm. Because wisdom grows. We have to discover wisdom ourselves. Mm-hmm. But we have to learn from those that have been there.
Right.
So with that being said, what was one of the fondest memory that you have of your dad as you was growing up and as you were learning and shaping your thoughts on what you was going to do?
I think the one that's most poignant, when we were in Okinawa, my father, we went out on this barge and we were out in the middle of the ocean, and he had these big, huge, giant hooks, these treble hooks, and they were on big ropes, and they were throwing them over the side. And I didn't know what was going on. Heck, I think that at that time I was about 5 years old. And we get to the island, and we stop the boat, and the water's like crystal clear. And one of the things that I loved about my dad was that he would always lead me. And I'm looking down in this water. That water is about 20 feet deep, and he says, when you want to jump in, I said, I don't know, Dad. He says, okay, I'll tell you what. See, he dives into the water. And when he dives into the water, that gives me the courage to dive into the water. And that's what my father was like. He would push me, okay, and he would challenge me. And he wanted me to know it for myself. He didn't want to tell me the answers all the time. He just wanted me, to know for myself.
Wow. That's a lot of times that's how we learn. Mm-hmm. We follow, but we follow people that care about us, and that's important to us, shaping our development of who we are or who we're going to become. And so it's a constant learning. And I believe that your daddy was showing you the way, not just from a ordinary leadership position, but a leader, first of all, I believe, knows the way, goes the way, but most importantly, shows the way. Yeah.
You know, one of the things that he told me when I was younger, he says, you know, you don't have to take no for an answer. And when he first decided to become, you know, a Tuskegee Airman, he was, you know, it's at Central State University in Wilberforce, Ohio. That's where he met my mom. She was in Wilberforce. He was at Central State. And when he learned that the Army Air Corps was accepting applications to serve in an all-African-American combat unit, he immediately applied. However, even though he exceeded the requirements for consideration, his applications were repeatedly denied. And you have to understand, Franklin Delano Roosevelt was the president at that time in 1941, but it was his wife, Eleanor Roosevelt, who was known for her advocacy of minority rights. Determined to serve in this newly formed unit, my father traveled to Washington, D.C. to personally visit and present his case to Mrs. Roosevelt for becoming a Tuskegee cadet. He arrived unannounced at Mrs. Roosevelt's office and was promptly informed by her secretary that due to her crowded schedule, it would be virtually impossible for him to see Mrs. Roosevelt. Undaunted, my father told the secretary that he was willing to wait as long as it took, and he seated himself at a vantage point where each time Mrs. Roosevelt's door opened, she would be able to see him sitting in the waiting area. It was at the end of 3 days of patient waiting that he was finally granted audience with Mrs. Roosevelt. Once in her office, she shared that each time her door opened, she saw him sitting in the waiting area. When she asked the secretary who the Negro gentleman was, the secretary told her that he had come back for 3 days determined to meet her. Mrs. Roosevelt was impressed by his perseverance and shared that if he was willing to sit for 3 days, that she would grant his request for audience. During the meeting, Mrs. Roosevelt asked my father what she could do for him. He explained that his application to become a Tuskegee cadet had been denied 3 times with no apparent reason for disqualification. Ms. Roosevelt made no promises, but she told him that she would make some inquiries. And when my father returned to Ohio, he found out that his application to become a Tuskegee cadet had been approved.
That's determination.
Yes, sir.
You know, that's serious determination. I want to talk a little bit about the Tuskegee. Yeah, I want to show a video that you sent and on delve off into that. So here we go.
Sure.
They were pioneers who blazed a trail through the war-torn skies over Europe. Before the Tuskegee Airmen of World War II, no black American had ever been a U.S. military pilot. After the Tuskegee Airmen, the U.S. military would never be the same. Widespread discrimination prevented African Americans from flying during the First World War. For the next 20 years, the pressure would slowly build to allow black pilots to serve in the sky. Finally, in 1941, the Army launched what it called an experiment, the segregated 99th Fighter Squadron. That squadron would train at an airfield near Tuskegee Institute in Alabama, and thus the Tuskegee Airmen were born. To be clear, not every airman was a pilot. For every man who flew, there were 10 keeping him in the air, men and women, military and civilian, who served on ground duty support, like mechanics, supply personnel, cooks, and more. And not all were black. Some were white or Latino or Native American. One notable woman who helped the Tuskegee Airmen take off into history was the First Lady of the United States. Eleanor Roosevelt visited the squadron in 1941 and insisted a black pilot take her up, and that photographs would be taken. These photographs helped convince President Franklin Delano Roosevelt to send the unit into action, first in North Africa and later in Europe. The 99th, along with other squadrons, would later form the 332nd Fighter Group in Europe, their planes boasting tails painted bright red. In Europe, the airmen would fly more than 15,000 sorties, completing an unequaled 1,500 combat missions, all while showing great courage, skill, and dedication. Among their decorations, 150 distinguished flying crosses. Squadron leader Benjamin O. Davis Jr. would eventually rise to the rank of 3-star general, receiving a 4th star post-retirement. The Tuskegee Airmen were deactivated in 1946. The experiment a great success, but more than that, the brave flyers had proved themselves in combat, and their performance helped pave the way for desegregation of the military in 1948. Today, the National Park Service's Tuskegee Airman National Historic Site in Alabama helps tell their story and preserves their memory for all time.
Wow.
So,
Remarkable.
yes, sir.
So, your dad fondest memory by being a Tuskegee Airman, did he ever share that with you and your sisters?
I'm sorry, say that again, please.
Dad most fondest memories about being a Tuskegee Airman, did he ever share what was just what was so important? Why I'm talking about, that's history. That was history made.
Mm-hmm.
And just keeping the unit and all that together, and where it formulated, where they start recognizing that blacks had purpose in the war and that we was willing to serve.
Mm-hmm.
Even though that racism, I can imagine, I can't imagine how much that might have been part of, the discrimination process. But can you talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely. You have to remember that in 1941, the armed services were racially segregated. Furthermore, because the unit was stationed in Tuskegee, Alabama, these black cadets were subjected to Jim Crow laws and the harshest forms of racial discrimination. The screening process for entry into the program was designed to ensure that no one would be admitted. They wanted this experiment to fail, but that backfired on them, and it ended up sifting out the best of the best. Nevertheless, these white officers, relentlessly seized every opportunity to prove that these black airmen were inferior and did not deserve to share in their ranks in the Army Air Corps. They used every trick in the book to try to break and diminish these young black cadets. However, because they were the best of the best, these white men didn't understand the resilience, grit, and determination that these young black men possessed. Having been subjected to prejudice and unfair treatment throughout their entire lives, these black cadets were more than prepared to defeat these futile attacks. So instead of being broken by their racism, my father and his fellow cadets bore the weight of these unspeakable atrocities and instead used it to become stronger, both individually as a unit. The racism extended onto the base. These black officers could not be placed in command of, white airmen because the commanding officer of the Army stated that Negro pilots cannot be used in our present Air Corps unit, since this would result in Negro officers serving over white enlisted men, creating an impossible social situation. He went on to say that racial friction would occur if colored and white pilots were trained together. The Tuskegee Airmen couldn't even go to their own officers' club, which by their rank they were entitled to. This gave rise to the Freeman Field Mutiny, where several Tuskegee Airmen were court-martialed for trying to enter an all-white officers' club.
Wow. So when did that kind of change the time frame? Because as I read history, it says that the red tellers, they start asking for escort from the Tuskegee Airmen.
Mm-hmm. So that's an interesting story because the Red Tails had, when they got the opportunity, the Red Tails proved their superior fighting skills in aerial combat. And those fighting skills, preceded them. And the statistics don't lie. They bear it out. As a matter of fact, of the 179 bomber escort missions that they flew in the 15th Air Force, the total number of lost bombers was 27. And by comparison, the average number of bombers lost by other P-51 fighting groups in the 15th Air Force during the same period was 46. They were, by all accounts, twice as good as their white counterparts. The reason for their success was that the Red Tails had committed themselves to protecting the bombers at all costs. This differed from the white pilots because the Germans knew how to get the white pilots to chase after German decoys. And when those fighters abandoned the bombers, the main flight of the German fighters would then swoop in and decimate the unprotected bombers. That all changed when the Red Tails were finally given the chance to fly bomber escort. Instead of chasing these decoys, they held their positions and only attacked those German fighters that represented a legitimate threat to the bombers. They became so adept at bomber escort that the same white pilots who had previously sought their demise began requesting these Tuskegee Airmen, affectionately known as the Red Tails, to escort their bombers into combat. And isn't it interesting how the color of one's skin becomes transparent when one's life is in trouble?
And that's I love reading about the Tuskegee Airmen. One of these days, I plan on visiting, the institution.
JC, if time permits, I want to tell you a story about when I had the opportunity to do just that.
I'll tell you what, hold that. We're going to take a station break. I don't want to take one, but my producer's going to beat me up if I don't. I tell you, I am totally enjoying this conversation. We're going to come back. If you want to be part of this conversation, just go to the platform that you're watching this on. I promise you, we'll get you an answer. It's your life, and we'll see you shortly after the break.
Yeah. Dr. James J.C. Cooley. The James Cooley Show. It's your life. Yeah.
A Black Man's Point of View is the newest Amazon.com #1 release and bestseller book from author Dr. James J. Cooley, featuring the perspective from 11 other contributing authors. In A Black Man's Point of View, Dr. James Cooley unpacks his thoughts and personal experiences about the challenges, stereotypes, and feelings of self-worth that many black men face today due to a 400-year ancestry rooted in slavery and colonization. Yet, how so many black men move forward despite this history. Most importantly, A Black Man's Point of View conveys that all men, regardless of race, creed, or color, are capable of love, respect, and dignity. Described as a map to a greater life from the heart of a man who's experienced life's misfortune and harsh conditions, James shows us how beliefs, convictions, and a healthy mentality can help propel a life worth living. A must-read for all. Order your copy of A Black Man's Point of View by author Dr. James J. Cooley today from Amazon.com or wherever books are sold.
In this life you are gonna grow, but there's things in this world that you gotta know. To be the best that you can be, you wanna grow big into a strong tree. To be who you're created to be, the one who's gonna leave a legacy is you. But you got to have these 4 C's. Create, collaborate, then you commit with confidence. Create, collaborate, then you commit with confidence. It's the 4 C's. Oh yeah. It's the 4 C's.
Hello, welcome back to the James Cooley Show. It's your life, and I tell you, history is what we're talking about. We are talking about the Tuskegee Airmen. His Jim, father was a Tuskegee Airman, and I tell you what, a lot of people do not understand the history. They don't understand the contributions, and we're just trying to educate you a little bit more, even if you are a scholar and you understand that. But there's a lot of things that you probably don't know about. And just like what Jim said, there's a lot of things that he found out, and he's probably still are finding out certain things that that his dad probably told him. And I mean, now he see it. And I want each and every last one of you to get an understanding of this history-making contributions for what the Tuskegee Airmen contribute toward the war. I believe, based on history, based on everything I said, that was a turning point in the war, and it was because of that union. So, Jim, you was getting ready to tell me about your visit to the institution. I mean, one of these days, I got to make it happen.
It's worth it. It's definitely worth it. But I went there. As a matter of fact, remember I was telling you that I worked for United Airlines as a mechanic. And when I hired on at United Airlines, I was only one of 3 black mechanics out of 300. But what was interesting was that United Airlines was really interested. They were serious about diversity, equity, and inclusion back then. This is back in 2001, I think it was. At any rate, what they did was they had heard about the Tuskegee fly-in, down in Tuskegee, Alabama, and they allowed us 2 black pilots, myself as a mechanic, 3 flight attendants, and 1 customer service agent. They gave them a 737 during Memorial Day weekend, no less, and we were able to fly down, to Tuskegee. And what was interesting is that when we landed, I was looking out the window and I could see all of these military aircraft. And I found out that they had every branch of the military represented there. So they had F-16s, A-10 Warthogs, they had S-3s, they had every kind of plane. I mean, there were dozens of them. And so when we landed, there were probably 2,000 people there. Most of them were kids. And they had to hold them back because when we landed, you'd have thought the shuttle landed. When we got the air stairs up, we were allowing people to come up onto the airplane so that they could see the cockpit, so forth and so on. And the kids were excited, but the ones who were the most excited were the pilots of these aircraft. These guys most of them were reservists in the various, services. And they were blown away by the fact that United Airlines would have commissioned the 737 to come down to celebrate, the Tuskegee annual event. And it was a PR coup, because the vast majority, I'm sure that there are pilots today that are flying for United Airlines just because of that reason. But when I walked down the stairs and they had called the pilots to go and start flying their aircraft, I walked over and I saw these young men putting on their flight suits. And I started to get choked up, just like I am now, because I realized that they were standing on the shoulders of my dad and the Tuskegee Airmen, that they paved the way. That's why what you had said with respect to know the past, shape the future, had such an impact, because that's what I was seeing at that time. Later that day, one of the Tuskegee Airmen came over and he was talking to me, and he knew my dad. And while he was talking to me, he reaches down, he just leans down and he picks up this big, huge clump of dirt and grass. And he makes the gesture to give it to me. And I look at him kind of strange, it's like, man, what are you trying to do? Give me some dirt. He says, no, it's not dirt. He said, this is hallowed ground. He said, take this with you. And I have that same dirt in my waterfall at my house, to this day. It was an extraordinary ride. As a matter of fact, one of the two pilots knew my cousin. Now, you were in the Navy. My cousin graduated from Annapolis, okay, and he went to school with one. He went to Annapolis with one of those pilots. You talk about a small world. Yeah. But I stood out there and I looked across the field, and I told my dad. I just said, "Dad, wow, what a legacy! What a legacy!"
It is a legacy, and we got a couple of. I wouldn't call them questions. Tony Rose said, "I read that the first ever Top Gun winner was black, but wasn't publicized." I don't know if you know about that, but then we come back with Marcus saying that's a fact.
Mm-hmm.
So man, this is I'm learning so much, and we got Gabriel. Just said Colonel James Harvey on the first team is alive at 101 years young.
Wow.
So this is so extraordinary, so extraordinary. I want to turn to something that civil rights. I mean, as we already know, current situation. The current situation is not your final destination. For as what is happening in society today, we're talking about DEI initiative, civil rights initiative, all of those things under the current administration. They are cutting all of those things out, which I believe is going to hurt our achievements and hurt identifying and giving people an opportunity to excel, and don't really understand that. But what impacts did the Tuskegee Airmen have on civil rights, on the civil rights movement, and the fight for equality in America? And how can we get that back, to continue with the next generations to come, to have an opportunity to be able to be part of a great society that cares?
Well, you bring up a really very, very important point, because one of the more insidious aspects of Jim Crow and slavery was the cessation of the passing down of generational knowledge and wisdom. Maya Angelou said, I have great respect for the past because if you don't know where you come from, you don't know where you're going. And that's because history itself is instructive to future generations. So what did I learn from, the Tuskegee Airmen? We know that they weren't fighting one war. They were actually fighting two concurrently. And the irony can't be overstated, because they were engaged in fighting a war against a dictator who oppressed and killed Jews, while simultaneously fighting the same war of oppression in the Army Air Corps and in America. And while we won the war against Hitler, we're still fighting the same war against racism in our country today. As a matter of fact, one of the acts of the current administration with the rollback of DEI, one of the things that they had to comply with was the crackdown on diversity and equity inclusion initiatives. The Airforce removed training courses with videos of the Tuskegee Airmen. The stories of the Tuskegee Airmen are an essential part of American military history. Their aerial prowess helped win the war and save the lives of countless bomber crews. As such, it would be part of American military history that all service members should be proud of. But one thing is for certain, the accomplishments of the Tuskegee Airmen cannot be erased. My father said that they heaped twice as much pressure on the Tuskegee Airmen in hopes that they would buckle under the pressure. But instead, they didn't buckle under the pressure. They became 2 times better than their white counterparts.
Wow.
Yeah. It's interesting because when you were talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion, I remember when I first saw, Hidden Figures and Something the Lord Made, and just recently 6888. And
You speak of 6888. Funny you mentioned that. 3 years ago, we had one of the directors and producers that were writing the script on the show.
wow.
And never thought that it would turn into that the way
Movie.
it is right now. But that's history. That's another story.
Mm-hmm.
But all of these contributions, especially during Black History Month, 6888 and a Tuskegee Airman, those were two that I wanted on this on the show to discuss and talk about those achievements. I tell you what, we're gonna take a station break, but we're gonna come back. I want to pick it up from there. Don't want to cut you off, but I'll get beat up if I don't do this. Whichever platform that you're watching us on, if you want to be part of this great discussion, come on now. All you have to do is go to the comments on whichever platform. You got over 80 platforms that you're watching us on. So and just put in your question. I promise you, Jim will get you an answer. It's your life, and we'll see you shortly after the break.
All right.
Check it out. It's Dr. J.C. Cooley. Hey, let's go. The James Cooley Show. It's your life. That's right.
Hello, I'm Dr. James J. Cooley from the United States of America, and I am here to just say, first of all, I'm so happy and honored to be on it, to be in the Coffee Book 2023, Unified Brain Z and the other organizations. Thank you so much for giving me an opportunity to be a part of this collection. Welcome back to the James Cooley Show. It's your life, and I tell you, I am learning so much from this discussion that I'm having with Jim. And Jim, I just want to salute you, brother. Hey, this is a extraordinary, great conversation. I would love to have you back on if your schedule permits.
I'm retired, so I'll work it in.
Man, this is so educational, and I'll tell you, I believe not just doing Black History Month, and that's what a lot of people. Well, with Black History Month, that's 30 days. Black history should be every day, and we should be talking about and educating our youth, young adults, communities, future generations, that they could be part of great things to come.
Mm-hmm.
You know how the world is going to be shaped. So, but I tell you, this is so intriguing, and it's so educational, and it's so inspiring that your father, which was part of the beginning of this initiative, and it turned out where all of my readings is that the Tuskegee Airmen was invaluable. They had to have them in order to protect the units that they were protecting, and they was requested, even though they was told that they were not able to do these things until he started losing planes and stuff like that, and they had to call the best in. So I know you were talking about the 6 AAA, and I was telling you that we had, before it blew up like it is now, had them on the show. I think, Michelle, that was like 2-3 years ago.
Yes, it was. And we had them on the show, and we didn't know about that history. And there's just so many things we're not privy to as far as African-American history. But you know what? We have some questions from the audience for you. Tony wanted to know, your father being a Tuskegee Airman, did it inspire you to have a career with United Airlines?
Well, what's up, Tone? It definitely had an impact because I was around aircraft. When I was younger, I remember my father coming home. There was a hobby store that went out of business, and he bought everything up. And I was probably, 10, 12 years old. I can't remember, but there were all these models and all of these balsa wood models. I had got these, back in the day, you didn't have remote control planes. You had to have the one where you had your strings that went to the plane, and then you flew around in a circle. You get all dizzy. You remember that, JC?
Yeah.
So, and I used to tear them up. I mean, I'd break them up, and because I wanted to figure out. I always had a propensity for figuring out how things work. And so I would try to put all the stuff I was breaking back together in these planes that were made out of plastic. And one day I was out in the garage and I was messing around with some McDonald's straws, and I had some matches and stuff. It was a candle, and I put that McDonald's straw in it, and it started dripping hot plastic. And it dawned on me. I said, "Whoa, wait a minute. Let me see if I can weld these two pieces of plastic together with that, with the McDonald's straw." And sure enough, it wasn't pretty, but it was effective. So I learned early on and started, I was always tinkering, because I was around aircraft, I was really intrigued by it. Matter of fact, there's a funny story. When I was 16, both me and my twin sister, my parents came to us and said, "Hey, listen, what do you want to become? It's time for you to figure out what kind of, work you want to do." And I said, and I looked at them and I said, I want to sing, because I was a good singer. Right? And they both looked at me, and both of them in stereo said, "Sing," and it was funny because, it was almost like as if I'd asked them if I wanted to be a pimp or something, right? It was that distasteful to really. And after I dried off from all the cold water they threw on that, he said, "Well, you gotta pay the bills. So I told him, I said, "Well, I really do. I think I'd like to become an aircraft mechanic." So my father told me, he says, "All right, get in your car, go down," because we were literally right up the street, from the United hangar, from Stapleton Airfield. And back in those days, there was no security, none. You could walk right out onto the doggone tarmac if you want. Anyway, I go down there and I go into the hangar, and there were all these old white men. Okay. And this is day shift, so there's all old white men. So I go in and I I trip over a grounding cable, and I thought the world was going to come to an end because I didn't know anything about grounding cables and whatever. And all these white men turned and looked at me. And man, I was nervous. And so this older white man came over. He said, "Son, what can I do for you?" And I said, "Sir, I came down here because my father told me to come down here to find out what it takes in order for you to become an aircraft mechanic." And he puts his arm around my shoulder and he points out to the crowd. He says, "You see all those guys out there?" He said, "Every one of them got their training in the service." Okay. And I wasn't ready to go into the service. I was 16 years old. Well, as fate would have it, I got drafted into the service, and I had the option of being able to go into the Air Force. I took my tests, for aircraft maintenance, aced them, and the rest of it is history.
Wow. We got about 4 minutes in the show.
And a lot of questions from
I'm
the
sorry.
audience.
I get long-winded.
We got Gabriel said, "Can you read that, Michelle?"
Yes, he said, can you talk about the Tuskegee Airmen tributes in Colorado that we must protect, knowing this will help all the listeners protect their legacy?
Absolutely. Now, if this is Gabrielle Martin, this is interesting because I just got a text from a childhood friend of mine that told me that her father, was a Tuskegee Airman. And so that's a very good question. It actually segues with what you had said earlier, know the past, shape the future. And so, we don't have an active, an active unit here in Denver. And since the Tuskegee Airmen have died off, it's kind of fallen on the wayside. I think that, they have all these job fairs, where, these kids are coming, in order to get, jobs and stuff like that. And I think, opening a booth or something like that at some of these job fairs to be able to talk about the Tuskegee Airmen and then leading them to websites. They do have, some groups outside of Colorado. But it would be interesting, for us to resurrect that in order to be able to keep the legacy alive right here in Colorado. Because the last time they had one, it was in Colorado Springs.
And this is an important question. It's like, what lessons can we learn from the Tuskegee Airmen about overcoming adversity and discrimination?
Not giving up. The one thing that they did, that is the common denominator, whether it was the 6888, the Hidden Figures, the Tuskegee Airmen, they didn't give up. As because they pressed through the problem, they received a blessing on the other side.
Wow. We're down to 1 minute in the show. First of all, I want to say we got hooked up in San Diego real soon. And go fishing. Fishing starts at the end of March. I'm an avid fisherman. Make sure you got your passport and all that stuff, because we're gonna go. We going
international waters, huh?
Yes.
Okay.
Secondly, I do want to thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show. This was incredible, and you see all the response and all the love.
Oh my gosh, you got some supporters.
And this is going to go on for the next 2-3 weeks, and you'll see the numbers increase.
Wow.
So I want to thank you, and I want to invite you back if you have time. I'd like to thank Dr. Michelle Cooley for putting together another absolutely fantastic show. I'd like to thank your sister Janet for referring you, and she, yes, he lived up to the build-up that you had told us about. I'd like to thank our viewers and listeners for tuning in to the James Cooley Show, It's Your Life, Monday through Friday, 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, where we teach you how to dream big, think big, and be big at everything you do. We'll be back tomorrow with another absolutely fantastic guest for Black History Month. It's your life, and we'll see you then.